talk, man.
Yeah.
So what's going on? How you feeling?
Doing good.
Okay.
You know, it's a little high stress right now because, you know, we're kind of shooting from the hip with this. But,
Right.
You know, I was going over in my head all morning, like, how do I want to start this thing? You know, because I know I started last year. I started trying to do podcasts, and I made it through like 8 episodes, and I'm like, I just got too overwhelmed.
Right.
And this time I'm like, well, let me try to restart, and maybe we'll do it with video to add some more pressure, you know. But I don't know. I'm just more excited than anything, you know. I think like we've talked about, I overthink things way too much, and I think that's what I get in my own way, doing that.
Well, for those that are watching this, what is your biggest struggle? I mean, you and I have spoken many times in the past about this, but maybe people watching for the first time won't know. What is your biggest struggle? Things that you've been battling with for years?
Well, a lot is the anxiety. I have a little bit of PTSD from some life circumstances that happened, but I think the big thing is like the anxiety, and then from that is like I beat myself up from having anxiety, which stops me from doing things, that it turns into depression,
Right.
and then it just all spirals downhill from there.
Right.
But you know, luckily by coming to church and you know, being saved and everything, it's actually turned that around and made it easier for me to understand how to battle that and how to overcome it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's great, and I want all those that are watching this, and hopefully you'll be able to even tell some friends if to tune in. There's a lot of people that are battling anxiety out there. You know, anxiety is probably at an all-time level. I've said this actually from the pulpit a couple times, that there's a statistic or that was given to me in a book that I read, that the average person today suffers the same amount of stress and anxiety that somebody 30 years ago, 40 years ago would have been in a psych ward for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how high anxiety levels are.
Yeah.
And people are battling, especially younger people, are battling depression.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're turning to pills and so forth to deal with it. And I think with the advent of social media and everything we hear about the world's going to end, and, you know, the one crisis after another crisis, it's at an all-time high.
Oh,
and I want people who are watching this to know that when Joe talks about his anxiety, this is not a little thing. This is a serious matter that Joe has dealt with and is still dealing with. Are you still battling, struggling with overcoming anxiety?
Absolutely. I mean, from just going back 2 years, I lost a job because of it. I haven't been in work since. You know, I've been getting by, thankfully, to family and friends who've been helping me out with like smaller jobs along the way. But I haven't really been able to keep something full time, and that's because just how my anxiety hits me. It's very physical, so I deal with a lot of stomach and gastro issues. I deal with like hyperventilating and just like locking myself in a room because I can't like be around people because I just get so out of my mind, like crazy, and it's really I don't know, it's hard to deal with, but at the same time, it's like over the past couple of days I've hit a point where it's like such a perspective shift. And I know we talked about how I keep saying like, I feel like I'm missing something about the Bible. I feel like I'm missing something about who Jesus is. And it's really learning his perspective and applying it to my own life and how I see things every day. And that's, I think, has been the slow process of change that's been helping me get through all of this.
I just want to jump on there, what you just said, because I think it's very important for those that are listening, those that are watching. And I want 2 main points to come across here. Number one, Joe's anxiety is real. It was severe. It still is a little severe. Yeah. But you are obviously far more improved today than you were a couple of years ago when I first met you. But also what he said, there is no magic pill that makes it automatically disappear. You know, when you hear a lot of people apply their faith to some issues that they're battling with, it's as though, poof, okay, it's all done. I made a confession. I said this, and it's all gone. And when a lot of preachers preach stuff like that, they kind of give people false expectations. Yeah. You know, and when it doesn't work, well, the people are going to be discouraged and they're going to walk away from their faith. Yet, your faith is a step-by-step, day-by-day journey with improvement after improvement. You know, what a lot of people don't realize, about dealing with high anxiety and high stress is that your body gets programmed.
No.
Your brain gets programmed. Your physical body gets programmed to react to certain ways.
Yeah.
And so it's really a reprogramming of your whole body, of your whole mind, of your whole way of thinking. And like I know we've had many talks, obviously. You've been up on the mountaintop one day, that you've been bouncing in the valley, in the floor of the valley, other days, because there are certain things that trigger. Now, before we go into some of those things, again, just to bring the reality of your struggles, how many doctors or how much time with doctors do you think you spent with and visited over the years because of your anxiety?
Well, going back, I mean, my anxiety started when I was very young. Coming out of high school is when I first got diagnosed with anxiety and depression and stuff by my regular general physician. And we started on medication. And from there, it's been a whole journey. I went away to college and things seemed to help out a little bit. Went to sunny Florida. So when you're in the sunshine all day, you can't really be sad. But when I got back, things started to intensify a lot more. So I started seeing all different kinds of doctors, specialists, psychologists, psychiatrists, you name it. I was on all kinds of medications and stuff. And I was really going down a really dark path, made some pretty bad choices and stuff. But then, unfortunately I was going to end my life, and it was very uncomfortable and dark time for me. But then my mom got sick, and I was like, well, she ended up with brain cancer, as you know, and I'm like, I can't do anything now. I need to stay around for her. And so
how ironic it is, it's your mother's cancer that saved your life in one sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like I attribute that to God. And for people who are out there searching for miracles, it's 100% a miracle, because when she was told she has a year to live, we're 2 years cancer free.
Amen.
Right now. So it's nothing short of a miracle. But all the doctors and stuff, they all tell me I'm too stressed out, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to not be stressed out in a world that only produces stress? You got to keep up with a job, you got to keep up with family, you got to keep up with friends, you got to keep up with all this stuff. And now social media makes that 10 times worse, that feeling.
Right.
And, it wasn't until I came to church and saw like the perspective switch. Like you said, it's a process. There's no magic pill. And that is probably one of the hardest but quickest lessons I learned at church, and probably one of the most useful. One of my favorite things when you preach on these topics is you have to brainwash your brain, and you're like, I'm here to brainwash you,
Right.
And we talk about like a Christian cult and stuff, but it's like, it's so true. You have to wash your brain from everything that was drilled in. And I'm not saying like society is all bad, but there's certain things that, you learn in school and you learn growing up in your community that really is a stretch of the truth. It's not the full truth, and that's what church is here to do, and that's what the Bible is there to be, that certain truth, and not that exaggeration or additive or whatever extension of it. So I forgot, we went off topic. This is how my brain works.
This is how it works. So we're going to do this every single episode. We're going to keep going off the topic.
Yeah.
But again, you lead me to another good point, and I think this is something that you could share a little bit and relate to a lot of people that are watching this right now. Did you feel that you're mainstream, or that you were an outcast from society because of what you struggled with?
Oh, 100% an outcast. I mean, I felt like I was an outcast since I was younger, dealing with this without even knowing I was dealing with it, But the funny thing is like, now I enjoy being an outcast, because I'm much more relaxed. I'm getting to more happiness and finding happiness and true joy and what that actually is and looks like. I'm not like overexerting myself trying to keep up with doing anything, or following trends and stuff like that. We talked about how I don't even want to be on the internet at all, but you're kind of pushing me here, because like I do have a lot to say, and I really have a heart to help people, and I want to figure out how I can help people without overdoing it on my end too, so I can keep doing what I'm doing, I guess.
I think that is so true, and really, we're trying to speak to outcasts that are out there right now, that those that are struggling, because you've lived that, you've felt that your whole life, and I think you can relate to a bunch of people right now when I ask you to maybe go a little in depth on this next point I want to bring out. But I know, again, from conversations that you've had family members who just didn't understand who you were, didn't try to understand who you were, only cared about what their opinion was for you, and would try to push you and get down on you. And tell me how that made you feel.
Well, obviously it's tough, it's rough, and it's something that you learn to handle. I'm going to be the first to admit that I never handled it the greatest. Growing up in an Italian-American family, we've all seen, the Real Housewives of New Jersey, them screaming at each other, which is a real thing, or The Sopranos, any of those. But it really speaks on the culture. And, not to speak ill of the Italian culture. I love my heritage, and I love a lot of the traditions that...
I love your food.
Yeah, thank you. It's not only the Italians, it's a lot of cultures that do it. And I think it's speaking not against the culture, but against the thought process behind how they operate. My family, we grew up on the same plot of land for 115 years when we came from Italy. We haven't moved since. We built houses on it and everything. So it's a very hardworking, come from a very hardworking background, American dream when it was still actually a reality. Unfortunately, we're far away, we're going far away from that, but that's a sidebar. But yeah, so, I'm not, and we talked about forgiveness and everything. It's not like I'm holding a grudge. It's not like I'm blaming anything, but you have to talk about the reality of the situation so other people who are in the situation can see how it can play out and how you can change the outcome instead of going to that same negative loop all the time. But it was very hard. It was definitely difficult, but it wasn't until I started really getting into my faith and learning about Christ and learning about God until I understand how to deal with it, how to take it and how to deal with it and how to turn it into love and how to turn it into joy and stuff. One of my favorite things now is just like I'm trying to see everything as a challenge, not as a test from God, as a challenge from God. Because when you differentiate the two, a challenge is something that you can succeed at, and you can, I don't know the right words here, but you can
grow.
Yeah, you can grow. That is absolutely the right word. So with those challenges, like each step is like the Bible talks about perseverance under pressure, and all of this stuff, where perseverance comes in all levels of our life, from our personal life to our life out in the world. So it's one of those things where it's like I always like to use the phrase baptism by fire, and it's just like when I don't know, I just go and, God be my strength, Christ be my strength, because where I stop, that's where Christ begins. And I've finally come to understand that, and it's such an amazing feeling. And it took me 2 years, but it's just good, and it's just definitely... when I've been struggling with all the anxiety and everything that comes along with it, I finally have something that works, that's not putting chemicals in my body, that's not, making me do something absolutely insane. It's just something that is natural. It's very easy, very peaceful and relaxing. And you'll, to everyone who struggles with this, it's like you have to just be patient while you look for it. Because my relaxation sounds like playing guitar at 7 o'clock in the morning, annoying everyone in my house, because I'm just playing nice, soft music, just worshiping God for who he is, reminding me, singing songs that remind me of who he is and what he does for me and his plans for me and stuff like that. And that kind of just calms the ocean in my mind when I wake up and everything's like, okay, you're running around. My favorite scene to explain this is like in SpongeBob. There's that one scene where they're trying to make the Krusty Krab a fine dining establishment. So SpongeBob...
I'll take your word on all this, okay?
Yeah. But SpongeBob forgets everything except for two things, fine dining and breathing. And he forgets his name. He forgets like all of these other things. And that's how I feel a lot of the time, where it's like some of the simple stuff just goes out the window because I have a million things going on at the same time. Hence the title, It's Really Loud in Here, because that's why I need you here to help me sort out all of it.
Stay focused.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the first time you and I really met. I mean, I've seen you once or twice before because your mom would come to church here. But again, to give those that are watching this and listening to this a real feel of what you're dealing with, because there's a lot of people who have tried faith, or let's put it, they were raised in the church.
Yeah.
They were raised as Christians, and they just reach a certain point where they flat out rejected it. It doesn't work. It's the church is filled with a bunch of hypocrites and so forth, and so therefore they've left, and they've walked out in their faith, and they're just struggling, and they're trying to find a way to just survive life. And there's a lot of people like that, and I understand as a pastor, there is a lot of hypocrisy in churches. There is a lack of understanding for people who are struggling with mental battles in their lives and so forth. So I understand that.
Yeah.
But even though there is no magic pill, as we talked about, we'll talk about that more in the future, something did instantaneously, supernaturally happen to you. And I want to talk about that because you came to church because of your mom.
Yep.
And because she had, I guess it was right after she had surgery, or a little after she had surgery on her brain.
Yeah, a couple of weeks after she had her tumors removed from her brain. She's still not able to drive. And if that's the only thing, I always say, if that's the only thing she lost was a little bit of feeling in her driving foot, I'll take it and I'll drive her wherever she needs to go, because it's just such a miracle. But yeah, that's the only reason why I came, because I remember I would come for like Mother's Day or her birthday on like once in a while, and I would just be like, these is nuts, because I grew up Catholic. As an Italian American, you grow up Catholic, and not saying anything bad about it, but when I came here, my mind opened, my eyes opened a little bit more, and my heart definitely opened a lot more, because I got more understanding. You know, nothing bad about the Catholic Church, but it's religion, and there's such a difference between religion and faith, and I finally learned that. And do I still do religious things? Of course I do. I play my guitar, I play worship songs every morning, I pray, I do all these religious things, but it's separate from my faith. My faith takes precedence, and when you have a faith and a true belief, nothing can top that. It'll change your life.
Now, I want to just tap on something you said, because I think it's super important. You had come to church here a few times, and you know they're crazy.
Yeah.
Because it was not something you were used to.
Yeah.
It was different. But then all of a sudden, you were open.
Oh yeah.
At a certain point.
Yeah.
And so I remember Joe, after the service, came up to me up front and grabbed me and wanted to talk to me and say how something, I don't know if you used the word, but something miraculous happened in your life.
Yeah.
That you felt God's presence. You felt something change on the inside of you. And then you told me where you were just days prior to this.
Yeah.
That you hadn't really taken care of yourself. You know, you were a mess. Your hair was a mess. You were, completely unshaven. And that you had, I guess you were part of a group counseling program or something like that?
Yep. I was in an outpatient full-time counseling center for anxiety and stuff. And it was just they had me on high risk, suicide watch, all of that stuff. Surprisingly, they let me home. I begged with them to not commit me to a full-time institution where I have to stay overnight, because I just don't think anyone likes feeling like an animal in a cage.
Right.
But it was definitely not a good situation. And I came to church, and I was coming a couple weeks bringing my mom, and for those of you who struggle, you'll know what I'm talking about when you feel like a heavy weight is just sitting on your chest, and you feel like you have the whole world on your shoulders, and really it's like it's just all in your mind. And I forget what you were preaching about, but it was towards the end of the praise and worship section of our service, and I just felt that weight just start to be taken off. I guess it was the lyrics in the song. And I wish I could remember what song it was, but I just remember, and it really changed how I approached the service. And from then on, it just grew and grew and grew. And now it's like I can't wait for Sunday, because I can't wait to hear what you say next, because just the Bible, just by how you understand it and you teach it, you've taught me to learn it and read it on my own, and I get so much more out of it, and that's what really calms my spirit and calms my soul when I'm having these panic attacks.
Right. And
just coming to mind right now is there's a song, I forget which worship team sings it, but it's called "I'll Come to the Altar."
Oh, yeah.
And the first lines are, "Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well?"
Right.
And I was, and I think a lot of us are, and we just have to get over what society says about Jesus, because a lot of what you see about Jesus out there is not true.
Right.
And there's a lot of false. I hate to. My whole big thing now that God is pouring on me is like the unity of the church, but there's certain parts of the church that you have to be very careful with, because they put emphasis on the wrong things. I think, you know, some of the wrong things. You know, do I think praise and worship is the only way to glorify God? Absolutely not. Is it my favorite? Absolutely.
Right.
You know, I'm musical, I'm creative. I love that part of it. But you have to understand that that's not going to be your key to the kingdom of heaven. You know, you have to understand that that's only a part where you have to, that's in those songs when you're praising and worshiping, that's where you really let go and surrender your entire self, your mind, your thoughts, your body, everything, to that higher power that you can't see physically and you can't touch physically, but you just know it's there, and you know it's there with the other people around you.
Right. That's awesome. That's true. And again, just to make clear, you know, Joe, when Joe first came, there were a lot of negative thoughts towards religion, you know, organized religion.
Oh, yeah.
And you did not come like, oh, I want to get more religion in my life, you know. Yeah. So I know there's going to be a lot of people that are watching this that you have the same experience. You had bad experiences in church. You've had bad religious experiences, and you just have tuned God out and turned God off. And you're out there searching for something to fill that void, something to make the many different voices in the head, you know, come into alignment and stop bringing so much confusion and so forth. And so, you know, that was Joe's starting point. You know, you had to go into your counselor, and she thought you were suicidal, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's the most amazing part that I left out of that whole thing is, like, when I started coming to church, it was like a night and day situation where I was walking in with a dark cloud over my head into these group sessions, and one day it was just like I was smiling, I was like sitting up straight, I was sharing, I was really participating, and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" You know, they drug tested me, they did all of this stuff, and I'm like, I just see things differently now. You know, I look at things differently now. And that was then, and now to this point, I see things way differently now, and I understand why. And I'm like, man, more people need to see the world this way, because we're being shaped. I don't want to like say bad things about the Catholic Church, because I love the Catholic Church because it really, from a young age, it developed a reverence. It developed a respect.
Me too.
And everything like that. And one of my favorite things to do is I still love going to Catholic churches, because there are some of the most beautiful structures.
I agree.
On the planet. And but it's like there's a certain point of understanding where they stop, you know, and they're like, okay, this is good enough. Where here, you go as deep as you want. Don't fall down the rabbit hole, but the Bible makes clear what the boundaries are. And once you learn how to work within that, you know, my favorite thing about coming to to a born again church is, I guess that's the right term.
That works for me. SpongeBob would like that. So,
but my favorite thing is like the freedom in Christ. You know, I grew up with a Jesus that was, you know, you did something bad, you pray 10 Our Fathers, 2 Hail Marys, and you're forgiven. Right. But now you learn how to repent in real time and have it being an ongoing process of sanctification and all these great nuggets that you don't really pull from just going to church on Sunday at a Catholic church. You know, it's very rigid.
It's deeper. It goes to a deeper relational perspective.
But with that freedom, it just brings your faith to a whole new level, because it's like, I didn't know I could worship God like that. I didn't know I could thank God like that. I didn't know that I can say anything I want in prayer, or if I forget to pray, God knows I'm praying, because every time I complain, he hears it as a prayer. You know?
So is what you're saying that a relationship with God is completely different than just a religious way to serve God.
Absolutely.
And it's transformed your life.
Oh yeah. Because a relationship is two ways, right? It's giving and receiving. Whereas I grew up, I want God to like me, so I have to serve the altar.
Right.
I have to be an altar boy. I want God to like me. I have to go to confession twice a week.
Right.
I want God to like me. I have to put a lot of money in the envelope, you know? And that's another thing that keeps that when I first was coming here, one of the things that you say all the time is if you're here for the first time and you're just visiting, I don't want your money. I've never heard a church say that in my life. And that like threw me for a loop. And I was just like, they get it. Like they're here for more than just money or for more than just physical things or for more than just like building a new basketball court in the community. You're here to change people's lives and help people understand what has been keeping humanity going for over 2,000 years.
Right.
And it's just one of those mind-blowing things. Like every time I put it into that perspective, I'm just like, whoa, you know, it's like seeing the whole cosmos for the first time.
So what you're describing perfectly is the very definition of a paradigm shift. Joe had a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, a paradigm shift is that you see the exact same thing, but from a completely different perspective. And I had a paradigm shift. You know, when I was a teenager, I was like 17, and when somebody witnessed to me about Christ, and I went to a Bible study, and I had grown up in going to church, so I thought I knew about religion. I thought I knew about church. I thought I tried it all, you know.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, I'm in this Bible study, and like my eyes opened.
Yeah.
And I had a paradigm shift. And when I got home, my entire life changed. Now, I still had to deal with the issues that I had on the inside of me.
Oh, yeah.
I still had to grow, just like you're still overcoming, you know, these things right now. But I had a massive change that took place in the way I looked at life. And I think that, and you said something before, too, that I thought was also very important. And I think it is, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it hinders our ability to grow and to heal. And that is, you said you had to forgive people.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's almost become cliche-ish when we talk about forgiving people, and especially when you connect that to God and religion and so forth. And it's become so cliche-ish that we almost don't take it serious. But that is a very powerful reality. That if you're harboring unforgiveness on the inside of you, which then ultimately leads to bitterness on the inside of you, that does severe damage to your soul, you know, which is your mind, your thought, your emotions. And so therefore, how could I possibly heal my soul if I'm, you know, let's use your mother as an example, if I'm holding on to cancer in my soul? It's impossible. And the great thing is, we have the ability to forgive and get that out. But you know what? Yeah. Sometimes we can't do it on our own, which is where Christ comes in. When he comes into our life, he gives us the ability to forgive that which we couldn't forgive just a day or a week or a month earlier. Now all of a sudden I can forgive because he does something. So I truly believe that forgiveness is a big first step to healing of mental or emotional issues that we're struggling with, and then which also turns to physical issues that we're dealing with.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember coming into your office a few months ago, and we had that whole big not argument, a heated discussion. It was it wasn't an argument. It wasn't really heated. I was just getting loud because I'm Italian, but that's just the passion in me of trying to understand. Because I'm like, I don't have any bitterness, you know, and you're like,
that's right.
You have a lot of bitterness. I'm like, what's the bitterness? Because I'm trying to rack my brain, and it's just like, it wasn't until I got home and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and I'm like, God, like, show me where this bitterness is and just like get rid of it. Like, just help me understand what it is so I can handle it and deal with it, because I don't want it stopping my progress. Mm-hmm. And I remember coming to you like a day or two later, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. I see where it is, you know. And it's just one of those things where you have to just surrender and let go and let God do the work. You know, if like the Bible, James talks about faith and works, how they have to go hand in hand, you know, and you just spoke about this on Sunday. And it's nothing that you can do. You got to just let God do it. You know, and that's like, I try to force myself to feel better. I try to force myself to think differently. I try to force myself to do whatever, but it never works. It only aggravates me, stresses me out, and gives me panic attacks and all this other stuff, where it's like, you just got to let go with the flow, and just let God do his thing. If you trust in him and you believe he says what he's going to do. We're still recording. Good.
All right.
My Mac went to sleep. Uh-oh, that would have been bad news, but no, we're good. But if you just trust in him and let him do and believe that he's going to do what he's going to do, he's going to do it.
Amen.
He's going to do it. If you say to the mountain to move in Jesus' name, it'll move.
Let's go a couple steps deeper into something that you just said, because I think this will speak to a lot of people that are watching. When we had that conversation that Joe was talking about, and I remember it well, and from an outsider who knew Joe very well at this point from many, many conversations, it was so obvious to me that Joe was carrying still unforgiveness and bitterness on the inside of him. It was obvious. Yet Joe, like countless other people, was 100% sincere when you said, but no, I forgave them. Oh, no, I forgave that person. No, I don't even think about it anymore. And, you probably did say those words, and you did probably try to forgive them or something like that. But the reality was he was still holding on to that bitterness and unforgiveness on the inside. So there was a problem because he sincerely thought he did forgive, but the reality was he was still holding on to. Now, how do I know that? Well, I've been counseling for so many years right now that when the same smoke starts coming out, when the tone changes about a person or about a particular subject, and it keeps coming out over and over again, it's like, whoa, man, we got red flags sort of coming out over here. Yeah. And Joe would talk about certain situations in his life, and it was obvious to me that, oh man, he was still bitter against this group or against this person or against these situations that happened. And I tried to tell him that, Joe, you need to really let go, because that's holding you back. And with all sincerity, he believed that, but I'm not holding on to anything, which is why I think this is also very, very big too for those that are struggling really with anxiety, and what we're talking about right now is you have to trust somebody if you're really going to grow and really going to change. Yeah. Because we can't see ourselves. Like as you know, I play golf a lot, and it's hard to improve when you're on the driving range or when you're on the golf course swinging by yourself, because you can't see what your swing looks like. Yeah. And in your mind, you think you look like Tiger Woods. Yep. But on the other side, the reality, you look like nothing like Tiger Woods, because you have this big hitch over here, you're dropping your shoulder, whatever. So the only way is to listen to somebody else who's watching you and trust what they say, because they're going to see things that you don't see. And a lot of people who are struggling with some of these mental and emotional issues right now, they have a hard time trusting. Yeah. So therefore, they can't find that quote life coach, whether it be spiritual or whatever. And you've kind of overcome that. We can talk about that a little bit.
Well, I'm just going to come out and say is that we talk all the time how like we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And when you're looking for that spiritual life coach, it's like I came to make the decision that I'm going to listen to the person who is perfect. I'm going to listen to Jesus, and I'm going to listen to God. Because
talk about me there for a second. I was getting concerned. No, okay, good.
I mean, you're coming a close second, But I've tried everything. I've gone to Catholic church. I've tried different Catholic churches. I've tried I've been a Freemason, and that was interesting, and nothing bad about, like, I love the guys there. The brotherhood was great. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to healing character issues and such core issues of identity and what makes you who you are, we as humans get it wrong all the time, and we see that, and that's the forefront of society today. What we're putting our value in, what we're putting on social media and stuff like that. It just blows my mind to see how backwards we've gone. Mm-hmm. But without going down that rabbit hole, just really learning about what makes a person and what gives us our identity of who we truly are in the grand scheme of things. it really changes when you look at that. So like none of these coaches that are marketing themselves on social media or anything are going to really, if you're looking for that real change and that next step for growth, you got to start foundationally, like spiritually. And that's, a big thing that I've been trying to look at the link between the mind and the body,
right.
And we've talked about that. And you gave me this big chart that someone else came up with of linking all your thought processes and all your like cortexes and all of this cool, crazy stuff. But the Bible boils that all down simply so we can understand it and apply it. And that is probably one of the most amazing things I've found. And that really is what really is the catalyst of putting me in this direction of going forward and growing in positivity and all of that stuff.
So I think it's important what Joe just said, that he has first surrendered himself and submitted himself unto the Word of God, who's Christ. And there are a couple people in the church that Joe will listen to. I mean, he comes and meets with me just about every week. There might be some weeks that we miss or something like that. But we have to submit ourselves to those that have a certain authority over our lives, because we need, again, that coach who could watch us and point things out. And I admit it's difficult to find that person. I understand.
Oh yeah.
It's difficult to trust a person. I understand. But sometimes some of the biggest and most important journeys that we need to be on is to find that person, or that small group of people, and I emphasize small group of people, who I could really surrender myself to, and submit myself to, and have them speak into my life.
Absolutely.
And I think it's great that you start out with the ultimate perfect person, who's Christ and his word, that we need to submit to that, of course, because that's what transforms us.
Right.
It changes us. But you go a step further than that. And, there are certain people in this church, whether it be leaders of the church or good friends now that you've made in the church, that you'll listen to them if they speak to you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people who are suffering with some of the mental, emotional struggles that you have, they don't want to listen to anybody.
No.
Nobody understands me, you know?
And you just preached on Sunday about the horizontal of the cross. You know, you've been going through the vertical and now the horizontal of like serving each other, and you did a whole big sermon on community. And that's like, that is part of when people say, oh, I can't find God. I need to feel Jesus. I need to experience his presence. Find a good church with a good church community that has it together and they know what they're doing, because that is really the missing ingredient.
I agree.
Everyone here, like, I remember COVID hit and our church was in despair because we couldn't hug each other because we love each other so much here.
Right.
And it's not just this funny on a Sunday, peace be with you love. It's calling you in the middle of the week. Do you need anything? Are you sick? I got COVID. Had a line of people that wanted to bring me food and stuff. It's real community. Yeah. And for someone that struggles with the anxiety and stuff, who doesn't have a good foundation to help myself, that community is that firm foundation. And when you all believe the same thing, like the Bible, and you believe in God, and you trust in and put your life in Jesus' hands, it puts us all on that same level so that we can all speak from the same understanding. And whether it's you, it's Dave, Jerry Vidiello, there's Peter, so many guys that really help build me up to what I am today, and to, I know for sure that will be, as long as they're alive, they will always answer my phone calls and let me annoy them.
Be there for you. Let's touch on something that I'm going to say what a lot of pastors won't say, which is not surprising if you know me at all. But I'm a firm believer that churches all have their own flavor. I call it the Baskin-Robbins church methodology.
Yeah.
All churches are not the same, obviously. Just like all restaurants are not the same. All Italian restaurants are not the same. They may serve the same basic menu, but some of them are far better than other ones.
Yeah.
Or some of them specialize in other areas.
Right.
And I think it's super important to find the church that has the right flavor for you. What do I mean by that? You know, there are some churches that, man, they are all about drama, and they have unbelievable drama teams in there, and they put on like professional shows along with preaching the Word of God. And if somebody's really big into drama, well, that's probably a church you should go to.
Yeah.
There are others that, man, I'm all into the prophetic and, you know, trying to be a prophet. And, well, there's a lot of churches that do that. And you should go there. And this probably isn't the church for you if you're looking for stuff like that, you know. There are churches that are all about outreach and going in mission fields and stuff like that, and which is great, of course. But this church here probably isn't for you if that's going to be your strong emphasis.
Yeah.
But then there are churches like our church that are very community based, that we try to be a community and really develop internal relationships with one another to strengthen one another and lift one another.
Yeah.
There's a lot of churches that don't do that. That's just not their flavor, and I'm not faulting them. That's just not who they are, you know.
Yeah.
So you may have set foot in a church and it was good, parts of it were good, but it just didn't connect with you. Maybe that church just had a different flavor. Maybe you're just not finding those groups of people that could surround you and help you and lift you up. So I want to suggest, don't quit.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Perseverance.
Yes, and don't judge every church by one church. You know, find the church that meets your need per se, and it will transform your life. And you're living proof.
Yeah, and biggest thing, like another big thing that I've learned is like I said earlier, you can't judge Jesus in the church by the actions of bad Christians,
right?
You know, and we're all bad Christians, honestly.
It's like judging all Germans by the action of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah,
you know, it's not true.
But it's about looking past our faults and just seeing the glory in Christ to the best that you can in a person. And if someone's messing up, have a nice conversation. You don't have to be mean to them. You don't have to reprimand them. You just be like, "Hey, brother, I think you're on the wrong. You're a little bit off of the tracks. Let's get you back on. You know, help you back on." Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I it's just like church is the place to be, I guess. You know, if you're like me, church is the place to be because it's the only place that I can really find like mental rest.
Right.
You know,
right.
And that's when you're dealing with anxiety and stress. That's what you really, if you want to heal, you need that rest and you need that comfort.
A safe place.
And you know, God gives that to you. You just have to be willing to accept the way that He gives it to you.
Right.
You know, and understand that it's not going to be some high action, fast paced, you know, thing. Like God wants you to rest. He wants you to stop. You know, be still and know that I am God. Right.
That's, be still. A great verse. And what does it mean? Be still. I mean, it's really up here.
Yeah.
Be still.
Yeah. And just like know that no matter what's going on around you, like I said, like we said the other day on Friday, I'm really into Matthew chapter 6 right now of why are you got to worry about tomorrow? Tomorrow's going to worry enough about itself. Be like the birds.
Right.
You know, they don't care. They don't worry about what they're going to eat next week. You know, they just go day by day.
That's going to be my next message I preach, by the way.
Yeah, and they just live off of God's provision. And that's, I think, such a message that the world needs to hear because we're all not doing that. You know, we're very actively, I know we talk about it a lot, how in our country, in our culture at least, we jam pack our schedules to hour to hour to hour to, like, I know people that divide their schedule by half hour, you know, and it's like, why are you packing so much stuff?
Well, crazy. And we wonder why our stress levels are so high.
Yeah. And it's like now I'm enjoying not working, you know, I'm not really that I'm enjoying it. You know, I have a lot of issues with it that I'm, you know, in the condition that I am. Mm-hmm. But at some point it's like, okay, my anxiety's so high I can't work. My depression's so high I can't do this, I can't do that. But at the same time, rejoice in it. Because you know what? That's God saying, you got to slow down. You got to stop. Your mind's been overworking for how many years now? Right. And now it's time for you to just slow down and learn how to love life and learn how to enjoy life. Because you have so many years ahead of you, in my case. But, you know.
Are you saying I don't in my case? Was that an implication there?
No, it's not. I mean, it's just we're different times. I'm just entering Act 2. You're at the end of Act 2. You know, you've seen this part. You've seen this part already.
More Act 3, but that's okay.
No, you still got a long. Yeah, you can't bail on me. You know, we got a couple more years of this at least. But
right. Well, hold that thought right there, because you said something very, very, very profound about the importance of rest in our lives. I saw a video. I saw some guy talking about a video, and he was talking about two of the jobs that he had in more of the modern tech field. And he said, I work for two of the biggest companies in the world, like a Google kind of company. I forget what they were, and whatever the other one was, I forget. And he said, when you first go there, you're like, wow, look at all the extras they give you. And they give you food, and they give you places to just chill and rest. They bring in guests. They bring in celebrities. Will come in. They'll pay them to come in so you can hang with them. They'll put a basketball court in there. Excuse me. But then he said he realized something. He said in one place he was at, they didn't start serving dinner until 6. And he realized, oh, wait a minute. They want to keep me here until after 6. And a lot of the things they had planned were for like 7 o'clock at night, the special this. And he goes, wait a minute, when do I go home? You know, when do I spend time with my wife and kids? He said, I realized that they are constructing the workplace to keep people there.
Yeah.
And to not allow them to go home, or to encourage them to stay here and work more. We'll give you, some more fun things to do, but stay here and work more.
Yeah.
And that's a very dangerous thing. We need rest for our souls. And nowadays, people are going 7 days a week. And, I mean, they only may be working 5 days a week, but on the weekends, my kid's got 14 baseball games, or my daughter's got, all lacrosse games all weekend, and then we got to start. Even God had a rest.
Yeah.
Right? On the seventh day, God rested.
I remember when you were preaching a few months back, you made had a big series on the Sabbath and why the Sabbath is important, and that's another big thing that I learned. And what is it? I think King Solomon says it, that what does it do if you gain the world but lose your soul? Mm-hmm. And that's what I felt like was happening to me. I was getting so wrapped up in work and life and all this other stuff.
That was Jesus, but that's okay.
Oh, see, I still have a lot to learn. See,
don't we all?
But too many characters in the Bible.
There are a lot
at one time.
There are a lot.
But that's what it felt like. I felt like I was losing who I was. My identity became what my job was, what my friends were. What I did on the weekends and stuff like that, and I wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of people aren't happy, and they're just accepting just not being happy, that this is what life is. But it's not what life is. It's not what life is about. 2 years ago, I couldn't see the day ahead of me.
Right
now I see a future where I'm married, I have kids, I have, and it's just such a.
That's great. You didn't have that vision. You didn't have that future.
No, and I thought it was impossible. And still, there's like a lot that that I have to work through, that I'm dealing with. I'm afraid like I'm gonna die at a young age, like my dad. Mm-hmm. And that's like a big struggle for me right now. And it causes me to drag my feet in making like life decisions and stuff. But it's nothing that I can't get through at the end of the day with the power of God at my hand, at my fingertips, and it's not like I'm going to like zap lightning at people and stuff, but it's the power within, the power that I can control my thoughts, and I can control what moves me and what energizes me and stuff like that. But with the power of God, a funny thought, like this is how my mind just works. A funny thought is like, there's also times where it's like, I try to like invoke the power of God to like, go smite that person. Like, you cut me off, like, go whatever, but it just, I don't know. Now I have so much going on in my head, but there's in The Chosen, the series, if you haven't seen The Chosen yet, I don't like to be a spokesman in a human billboard, but The Chosen is probably one of the greatest modern cinematic pieces about. It's a series. It's a TV series about the life of Jesus and just what life was like around the
Right.
community. It doesn't even really focus on
Powerful.
Jesus that much yet. It focuses on his disciples and the community around him and the mess that he walks into and ultimately dies for.
Right.
And it just shows what I believe and hope what Jesus was really like 2,000 years ago. I think they do a great job with it. But there's a scene where James and John are with Jesus, and they cross paths with people who aren't very nice to Jesus, and then because they're Jewish,
Right.
and they start yelling things at him and spitting at him, and James and John are like, "Can't you just like strike them with lightning or something?
fire
Get rid
from
of 'em?"
heaven.
Yeah, and Jesus is like, "You wanted to use the power of God to rain fire from heaven," and it really makes you stop and think that how we act as Christians and like what our response is to these people. It's like, oh, you cut me off. Maybe you got to go somewhere a little bit quicker.
Right.
I'm not going to get aggravated, because all that does is bring negativity into your life. They're in a different car, the person who cuts you off. They can't hear what you're saying to them, nor do they probably care, you know? So it's just, I don't know. That's just a random thought.
It is, and you're filled with random thoughts.
Oh yeah, sometimes not for the they're not bad thoughts, but they're just like come at the inopportune times where they become distractions.
True. You know, I want to close out our conversation
Yeah.
here with this thought conversation we've had several times, you and I think it's important for those that are watching that struggle with anxiety. I've told Joe that he needs to first embrace this anxiety, embrace his struggles, because in a simple way, and I use this analogy, if you have something in front of you and you want to get it out of your life, you have to first embrace it, grab hold of it, and then you can move it out of your life.
Yeah.
And so it is with issues on the inside of us. I, again, as somebody who counsels all the time, people think that by denying it or pushing it away, I've dealt with it. And no, you have not.
Yeah.
You have to first take ownership of it. And once you take ownership of something, you then take power over it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we're having this and starting this series right here is this is one way Joe is taking ownership
Yeah.
of his struggles and his anxiety.
Well, I told you our last meeting on Friday, I said, I don't want to talk about anxiety on my podcast because I don't want to be identified by it.
Right.
I don't want to be the guy with anxiety. I don't like that identity, because sometimes what I would do is, and this is like another thing that comes along with anxiety and all of this stuff, is obsessive compulsive, where I have stuff taped all over my walls to organize my thoughts and,
Right.
and all of this stuff, and where it gets overwhelming, and you internalize it and you overthink it, and you're like, well, should I say this? Should I say that? Should I say this? And I just never came around to do it, and it just really is like, it makes me feel bad about myself because I have these issues and I'm not able to keep up with society and all of these things. But when you embrace it, like I only started embracing it on Friday, I
Right.
guess, because like since Friday now, like I'm doing, like this has been such a productive week, and it's really, the encouragement is a big factor in what pushes me, but it's also that understanding and that comfort that you find. Like, I don't know the words that I want to say. This is the hard part. It's just that when you're around people that understand and will support and see what you're trying to do and support what you're trying to do, it makes it 100% easier.
And that goes back to what we were talking about before about community.
Yeah.
The importance of surrounding yourself
Yeah.
or connecting yourself, plugging yourself into the right community.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage, again, everybody that's listening here right now, don't just push things away and throw them away and ignore them, because they're not going to go away. They're not going to disappear. Grab hold of them and gain power over them and say, okay, this is who I am. This is what I am right now at this moment. How do I make the best of it? How do I start to overcome this? Now that I have my hands on it and I control it, now I can examine it. Now I can look deeply into it and find out, oh, this is what I do. This is what happens to me. So, number one, if you get anything out of this little conversation we had here today, is take hold of something. But then also find the right place to plug yourself in. Find somebody to listen to who could mentor you and speak into your life. Don't be afraid of faith. Even if you had bad experiences, which I know many people watching this have had bad experiences, don't be afraid of faith. Pure faith, real faith, is freeing. I think you used that word a couple times. It's freeing on the inside of you.
And it's individual. Like, yes, we have corporate faith, which is great. And I love coming here on Sunday and worshiping with everyone at our church. But at the same time, when you leave here on Sunday, it's like the church isn't a building.
Right.
You know, your faith is your own. You know, your faith is different than my faith, but we still have the same values and the same faith.
Right.
But how you practice your faith is a lot different than how I practice it. And I hope one day that I can have faith as strong as yours, because
better, stronger.
We'll see. I mean, it's hard to pass up the master, but it's you know, it's very encouraging to see people who have figured it out or seem to have figured it out, and see how they operate. Because you always have to be learning. Your heart and your mind always have to be open to learn, and be accepting of new experiences, new ideas, and stuff like that. But yeah, don't be afraid of faith. Keep searching. Don't search for Jesus. Got to plug that. But you know, you can go and try everything. But I've done enough searching for myself, and I've come to this great conclusion. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Right.
And so I encourage you, I guess we both encourage you to just, if you don't have a church, find a church, find a pastor to just have one conversation with. I challenge you to do that and see what it does. Because if you talk to the right person, it will change your life. If they know their stuff and they're doing it for the right reasons, it will change your life.
If you're in the Lincoln Park, New Jersey area, anywhere near, come, I'll sit down. I'll talk with you. And
I'll link all the address and the web address and everything to the description and everything, so they can find us very easily.
And we're looking forward to, in the future, having Joe Rogan come and join us on our podcast. Joe, that's an open invitation to you right there. I'm sure you're going to be watching this. I know you're a big fan. We would love to have you. But we want to really reach out and help people who are struggling in an area that nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this hidden plague that is covering our country, and that is anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
And so somebody needs to talk about it, and I believe that's one of the purposes that God has for Joe's life right now. Is unfortunately right now he's going to be anxiety man.
Yeah.
But the superhero anxiety man. You know, helping other people overcome the same thing.
Yeah.
Joe, sign us off with it any way you want.
Thank you for watching. You know, hopefully one day we'll cut the head off of Goliath finally. But we'll get there. Thank you for watching, and hopefully to see you guys back next time. All right. Bye.
What is my purpose?